And that's when everything she thought was true fell apart. Zaria Blaine had a plan that morning. Nothing dramatic. No confrontation. Just a quiet surprise. Lunch in hand, an ultrasound photo tucked in her purse, and a hopeful smile she hadn't worn in weeks. But fate doesn't knock either. Sometimes it just swings the door wide open and leaves your world gasping. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just walked out. Because standing in her husband's office was a woman she'd never met, holding a child who didn't need a name to be recognized. The curve of her brow, the shape of her nose, the quiet confidence in her stance. It was all him. And somehow, this stranger wasn't surprised to be there. She had already been claimed. So the question isn't how Zaria found out. It's how she survived it. Because the truth didn't knock. It broke in. And what came next changed everything. She didn't knock. She just opened the door. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only to realize they held back the truth? This story isn't about cheating. It's about silence, secrets, and what happens when love is tested by the one person you swore would never lie. Can a man who hides a child be trusted to raise one? Zaria Blaine never imagined her peace would be her greatest rebellion. She wasn't born into luxury. She didn't crave headlines or the curated sparkle of city gossip. Raised in a modest corner of Queens by her Aunt Della, Zaria's life revolved around worn paperbacks, quiet tea mornings, and handwritten notes from customers who found healing in forgotten books. Her aunt didn't talk about wealth. She talked about worth. And Zaria carried that difference with pride. By 28, Zaria had built something for herself. Not flashy, not loud, just real. Her wellness studio in Harlem sat on the corner of Lenox Avenue and 122nd. Inside, the scent of lavender met soft jazz and the voices of women who no longer needed to whisper about their pain. Breakups, miscarriages, abandonment. Zaria held space for it all, offering trauma-centered therapy sessions that felt more like home than counseling. Meanwhile, 6 miles south, Lenox Dane ruled a different kingdom. Midtown Manhattan pulsed with glass towers, boardrooms, and headlines that carried his name. CEO of Dane International Holdings, Lenox was the kind of man you didn't meet by accident. He didn't just flip real estate, he reshaped cities. Warehouses became luxury hotels. Parking lots became tech campuses. He didn't follow trends. He created them. But despite his empire, Lenox stayed unseen. He rarely gave interviews, never smiled for press photos. And though tabloids speculated about his dating life, none had proof. What people didn't know was this: Lenox wasn't hiding from the public. He was hiding from himself. They met on a Thursday. The event was held in a modest downtown venue, a city-led initiative for women entrepreneurs in mental health and community care. Dane Holdings had silently funded the grant. Lenox wasn't required to attend, but something nudged him there anyway. Zaria was the final speaker. She didn't wear designer anything. Her curls framed her face naturally, and she stood without notes. No slides, no script. She simply told the story of a woman she once worked with, a single mother, who had never said, "I deserve more" out loud, until their 6th session. Zaria's voice didn't tremble. It didn't rise for applause. But every sentence felt like truth being unwrapped in real time. Lenox watched from the back. He didn't expect to feel anything, but something about her made him shift in his seat. Her presence wasn't practiced. It was steady. And for a man used to masks, that steadiness felt intrusive. After the applause, he stayed seated. Zaria stepped off the stage and quietly accepted a small cup of water. She looked up, and their eyes met. Briefly, she nodded once. Polite, dismissive, like she had no idea who he was. And that was the moment Lenox knew he wouldn't forget her. The next day, flowers arrived at her wellness center. Not roses, dahlias. With a note, "Thank you for speaking. The city needs more women like you." Zaria blinked at the card, then tucked it into her drawer. A week passed, then another. He returned to Harlem quietly one evening and sat in the last row of her public mindfulness class. At the end, he waited. She walked over with calm suspicion. "You again," he smiled. "You remembered? You sent me flowers." "They weren't enough." She raised a brow. "To say what?" "That I'd like to take you to lunch." Zaria studied him. Not just his face, but the weight behind it. The silence, the control. She recognized it. He wasn't used to being told no, and wasn't entirely sure how to ask for yes. Still, she answered, "All right." One lunch. Lunch became dinner the next week. Then, 2 more. He was always on time, always paid in cash, and always asked about her day. Not her business numbers, not her degrees, just her day. For 6 months, they orbited each other quietly. No social media, no headlines, just walks through Fort Tryon Park, soft jazz playing in his car, and dinners in restaurants tucked away on quiet corners of the city. Lennox Dane never once tried to impress her, and that was what impressed her most. Then came February, a snowy Thursday. She found him standing on the rooftop of a small building in Brooklyn Heights. The wind chilled her arms as she stepped out of the elevator, and there he was, coat undone, snow falling on his lashes. The Empire State Building blinked in the distance behind him. He didn't say much, just reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple ring. No diamond, just a band, rose gold, engraved with the word still. Zaria stared at him, stunned. He said softly, "I've never met someone who didn't make me want to disappear. Until you." She didn't cry, didn't scream. She just whispered, "Yes." They married 2 weeks later at City Hall. No fanfare, no photographers, just 2 signatures, 2 hands, and 2 people who thought silence meant safety. Zaria moved into his brownstone on the Upper West Side. The home was beautiful, full of curated art and minimalist spaces, but slowly she filled it with color. Books, candles, framed photos of the women she'd helped. It became a home, not a showroom. Every morning, Lennox would kiss her wrist before leaving, a soft, almost reverent gesture. It was his way of saying he hadn't forgotten what they were building. She believed him, until she couldn't. Because the man who kissed her so gently had already been a father, and he didn't say a word. Zaria had always believed love lived in the details, in the way Lennox kissed her wrist each morning, the way he'd tilt her chin up during long silences, searching her eyes like they held the answer to something he hadn't asked yet, the way he brought home warm soup after her IVF procedures, always from the small cafe near her center, never forgetting the ginger biscuits she liked to dip. Those details were what she clung to, even when the days began to feel different. At first, it was small. Lennox started leaving earlier. He blamed project delays in Tampa, a new waterfront development outside Chicago. His team needed him on the ground more often, he said. Sometimes he'd fly out for a day, sometimes 2. But Zaria noticed the shift. He didn't take his second phone anymore, the personal one he used when they first dated. It sat untouched in the kitchen drawer. She asked about it once, and he waved it off with a kiss to her forehead. "I barely use it anymore. Everything's on my work line." She nodded, but her stomach dipped. Still, she didn't push. She never had. Instead, she poured herself into her work, the women she counseled, the quiet moments when a breakthrough would bring a client to tears. She understood the weight of hidden pain, the way people smile through what's shattering them inside. What she didn't understand was how she became one of them. IVF wasn't easy. Zaria had always imagined conception as something tender, almost spiritual, but this was clinical, regulated, timed. She tracked her cycles, logged every hormone, took daily injections with Lennox holding her hand, watching her face but never saying much. When the first attempt failed, she cried into his shoulder. He held her, said all the right things, but his eyes stayed dry. When the second attempt took, she found out while he was in Tampa. She called him right after the test. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. It worked. He paused. Not for long, but long enough for her to notice. "That's incredible," he finally said. "Are you okay?" "I am now. I'll be back Thursday. Let's celebrate." She smiled at the phone, trying to ignore the silence behind his words. She told herself he was just overwhelmed. Busy. Not everyone reacts with tears. Still, she waited for him to say something more. But the call ended, and she sat alone in their kitchen, fingers resting on her stomach, heart waiting for a joy she couldn't force. When Lennox returned, he brought flowers, white orchids, elegant, perfect, cold. He kissed her, said all the things she wanted to hear, and Zaria, wanting to believe again, leaned into it. The next morning, he kissed her wrist again before heading to the office. "I'll call you after the board meeting," he said. She smiled. "Don't forget, I'm cooking tonight." He gave a half smile. How could I forget? But he never called. And dinner went cold on the counter. The next few weeks passed in quiet waves. Lennox's absences grew longer. He missed an ultrasound appointment. Zaria covered for him with the nurse, pretending he was traveling for an important deal. She didn't admit the truth, that she didn't know where he was half the time, that the man who once shared his calendar down to the hour had become harder to reach than any client she'd ever worked with. Still, she gave him grace, because love, she'd been taught, meant believing the best, even when the worst whispered in your ear. Until that Wednesday. Zaria woke early. The rain tapped against the window. She had a prenatal checkup scheduled at Columbia Presbyterian, a few blocks from the center. She pulled on her coat, slid her small folder of medical papers into her tote, and kissed the ultrasound envelope she hadn't opened yet. She wanted to wait, to share it with him, to see his face. She smiled to herself as she stepped out, her boots splashing gently against the puddled sidewalk. After the scan, the doctor gave her a soft grin. Babies strong, heartbeats beautiful. Zaria laughed, the kind of laugh that bubbled from deep relief. She took the sealed photo and pressed it against her chest. She wanted to surprise him. Lennox had a board meeting that morning at his headquarters on 47th. She knew his assistant's name, had the access clearance to visit the building any time. She stopped at a cafe, grabbed his favorite turkey pesto sandwich, and made her way downtown. Inside the marble lobby of Dane International, everything felt cold and polished. The receptionist, a young woman with neatly braided hair, looked up and gave her a polite smile. "I'm here for Mr. Dane," Zaria said, her smile light. "I wanted to surprise him." The woman blinked. "Oh, he stepped out for a quick errand. But someone's already in his office waiting for him." Zaria tilted her head. "Someone?" She didn't give her name. Said he asked her to wait. A slow ripple moved through Zaria's chest. Still, she nodded. "He must have forgotten to tell me." The receptionist buzzed her through. Zaria walked past the long hallway of floor-to-ceiling glass offices, and then she saw it. His corner suite. The door was open. Inside stood a tall woman, her back to the door, wrapped in a charcoal. Trench coat, red heels clicking lightly on the marble as she paced. Beside her, a little girl sat quietly on the leather couch, swinging her legs, pink hoodie bunched around her wrists. Zaria's lips parted to smile, assuming perhaps it was a client. Then the child looked up, and her whole world stopped. The little girl's face. She'd seen that expression before. The same almond-shaped eyes, the same nose bridge, the same slight arch of the left brow when curious. A birthmark near her temple. One that Lennox's niece also had, a family trait, he once said. Zaria's heart slammed into her ribs. The woman turned slowly, startled. Zaria swallowed. "Hi, I'm—" She paused, glancing at the girl. "Are you waiting for Lennox?" The woman stiffened. Her lips tightened before she spoke. "Yes," she said. "He's my daughter's father." The words didn't echo. They detonated. Zaria stared at the child again. This time, with clarity. Her chest didn't ache. It caved. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just turned and walked. Zaria didn't remember walking to the elevator. Her fingers moved, her legs obeyed, but her mind stayed in that room, frozen on a pink hoodie and a birthmark she couldn't unsee. The elevator dinged. A suited man stepped aside. She entered, pressed the ground floor button with a hand that barely felt real. By the time she reached the street, her breath was shallow. Her ears rang like she'd been underwater too long. She crossed 47th on instinct. Didn't look for traffic. Didn't even open her umbrella. Rain streaked down her coat and blurred the city into a wash of grey. Her phone buzzed twice. Then again. Lennox. She didn't answer. She didn't trust herself to speak. The ultrasound photo still sat in her tote bag, untouched. The sandwich. She left it on the front desk. A part of her wanted to cry. But another part, the deeper one, had gone numb. She drove with the heater blasting but felt nothing. The city passed in flashes. Soho, then the East River, then Williamsburg. She pulled up to Ayana's apartment building in Brooklyn, pressed the buzzer, and waited. Ayana didn't ask questions when she opened the door. She didn't even comment on the soaked coat or red-rimmed eyes. She just stepped aside and whispered, "Come in." Zaria slipped off her shoes, walked straight to the couch, and curled up. Not like a guest, like someone hiding from herself. She didn't speak. Not that night. Not once. Ayana covered her with a throw blanket, placed a glass of water nearby, and sat on the armrest quietly. Zaria clutched her tote close. Eventually, she pulled out the ultrasound envelope. She opened it slowly. A tiny figure, fingers forming, spine visible. A heart that had pulsed with strength only hours ago. Her own hands shook. She held the photo for a long moment, then tore it in half. Ayana flinched softly, but didn't interrupt. Tears didn't come. Zaria blinked twice, then leaned her head back and stared at the ceiling like it could give her peace. But there was none. Only silence. And in that silence, she realized something chilling. He didn't cheat on her. He betrayed her hope. The next morning, Zaria woke early. Ayana was already dressed, sipping coffee at the kitchen counter. Zaria walked in quietly, poured herself a cup, and sat down. Still no words. Ayana finally said, "He called." 3 times. Zaria stirred her coffee. "Did you answer?" "I let it go to voicemail." Zaria nodded once. "Thank you." Ayana hesitated. "You don't have to tell me what happened, but are you okay to go back?" "I'm not going back," Zaria replied, voice even. "To the apartment? To any version of pretending this didn't happen?" Ayana looked at her for a long moment. "You want to stay here longer?" "No," Zaria said gently. "I need to be where I can think." She meant her studio, that back room she used for storage and lunch breaks. It had no bed, no TV, just a small couch, a kitchenette, and a folding table. But it was hers. Before Lennox, before this storm. She returned to Harlem by 10 a.m. The receptionist blinked when she saw Zaria walk in with a small overnight bag. "Dr. Blaine?" Zaria nodded. "Can you cancel my noon appointment?" "I'll take the others." The girl hesitated. "Of course." Zaria opened the backroom door and exhaled slowly. The couch, the silence, the smell of eucalyptus oil still clinging to the air. Safe. She locked the door and sank into herself. She didn't check her phone, didn't read the news, didn't look at the ultrasound photo again. Instead, she took a deep breath and whispered aloud, "I'm pregnant, and I'm alone. But I will not be silent." It wasn't for anyone else. It was for herself. The next 2 days moved slowly. She kept her schedule light. Met with 2 clients, 8 when she remembered. Slept in stretches of 2 or 3 hours. Lennox emailed. He didn't beg, just asked, "Tell me where you are. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me explain." She didn't reply, because she already understood more than his explanation could offer. He had buried a truth so deep he thought silence made it manageable. He wasn't evil, but he was selfish. He wasn't careless, but he was a coward. And now the child inside her had to grow through the ache of that knowledge. On the third day, she finally called her aunt, the woman who raised her, taught her to read pain like poetry, and never once sugarcoated what life could do. "Aunt Della," she whispered. The older woman's voice came sharp and alert. "You okay?" Zaria swallowed. "I left." There was a pause. Then, "You pregnant?" "Yes." "His?" "Yes." "Did he cheat?" "No." "Worse. He lied." Another pause. Longer this time. Then, Aunt Della said quietly, "You did the right thing. Don't let silence become your prison. Let it be your protection until your strength returns." Zaria's breath hitched. She hadn't cried for Lennox, but for those words, she did. That night, she finally listened to one of his voicemails. His voice was hoarse. Stopped. Started again. "Zaria, I'm sorry. You saw her. You saw Evie. I never meant to hide her to hurt you. I just didn't know how to talk about that part of my life without losing this one. Us. You." There was a long pause. "I should have told you the day I proposed. I should have told you before we even kissed. But I didn't. I thought I could separate the past and present. I was wrong. And I'm sorry." Zaria stared at the ceiling. It was the closest thing to truth she'd heard from him in weeks. But it still wasn't enough. Because truth delayed is betrayal in slow motion. And he'd waited too long. It was raining again. Zaria stood outside the brownstone she once called home. Her coat clung to her shoulders, her curls damp against her cheek. The key still worked. Of course it did. He hadn't changed the locks. He wouldn't. She stepped inside quietly. The scent of cedarwood lingered. Lennox's cologne. The lights in the hallway were dim. The house looked the same. But nothing felt familiar. She could hear the soft hum of music from the kitchen. Something old. Sam Cooke, maybe. She followed it. Lennox stood at the stove wearing joggers and a white t-shirt. He held a coffee mug in one hand, stirring something in a small pot with the other. His back was to her. Peaceful. Ordinary. She could have walked in and pretended nothing happened. But pretending was what brought them here in the first place. Zaria set her purse down on the counter, then reached inside and pulled out something small. 2 torn halves of the ultrasound photo. She slid them across the marble. No words. The sound of paper against stone made him turn. When he saw her, his face froze, then dropped. He looked at the photo, then at her, then back at the photo. His mouth opened, closed. She spoke first. "I went by your office," she said softly. Lennox's hand trembled slightly. "Zaria." She didn't let him finish. "I saw her." He swallowed hard. "Zaria, please. I met the woman. And the child." The silence cracked like glass between them. Lennox stepped forward. She stepped back. "Don't," she said. "Not yet." He nodded once. Pain flickered across his face. His shoulders sagged under the weight of a truth no longer hidden. "How old is she?" Zaria asked, calm but direct. 4. Zaria inhaled slowly. "You've been her father for 4 years. She wasn't planned. It happened before you. During a time I was lost. And during the time we were married. She's lived with her mother," he answered. "I've supported them, quietly. I wasn't in a relationship with her. It was never emotional. Just one mistake. One moment." Zaria raised a brow. "Mistakes don't have birthdays." Lennox flinched. She continued. "You proposed to me without telling me. Married me without telling me. Slept beside me every night. Kissed me goodbye every morning. All while hiding a human being. I wasn't hiding her out of shame," he whispered. "I was afraid. I didn't want to lose you. You lost me anyway. Lennox stepped closer. Slower this time. He didn't reach for her. His voice cracked. I thought I could protect both lives. Hers and ours. I thought silence was mercy. Silence is control, she said. It's choosing for someone else. You didn't trust me to choose. Tears stung his eyes now. I wanted to tell you so many times. When we started IVF, I panicked. I thought it would complicate everything. It would have. But I deserved to know. I was a coward, he admitted. Zaria let that sit for a moment. A rare honesty from a man who rarely admitted fear. She looked around the kitchen, the space where they used to cook on Sundays, where she laughed once, barefoot, while he struggled with pancake batter. Now it felt hollow. I'm pregnant, she said. Lennox's eyes widened. She nodded. 12 weeks. The truth hit him harder than her silence ever could. You're pregnant, he echoed, as if testing the word. She stepped back again, calmly. But you already know what fatherhood feels like, don't you? His face broke, not dramatically, quietly, in shame. I never wanted to lie to you. But you did. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. I love you. Zaria's voice dropped. And I love myself more. That stung. He didn't speak after that. She picked up her purse, walked toward the door. He didn't follow. She turned before leaving. One day, I might forgive you. But not today. And with that, she walked out. No slamming doors, no raised voices. Just quiet devastation and freedom. She didn't return to Ayana's. She returned to the place she trusted most, her center. That night, she laid on the couch in the back room. No pillow, no blanket, just the weight of truth across her chest. She didn't cry. She'd cried enough in silence. This time, she just stared at the ceiling and whispered to herself, this baby deserves more. Not more money, more truth, more peace, more protection from emotional chaos that wears suits and calls itself strength. She rubbed her stomach. I've got you, she whispered, and I'll do better than what I had to survive. The next morning, she emailed her assistant with a simple subject line, resetting schedule, focus mode. The assistant replied with one line, got you. No questions asked. The women Zaria served came into her office as they always had. But something had changed. Zaria no longer saw herself as a therapist giving advice from the sidelines. She was one of them now. A woman carrying life while carrying pain. A woman healing while holding space for others to do the same. A woman learning, the hard way, that betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it wears your wedding ring. Have you ever been lied to by someone you trusted completely? Not with words, but with silence? Zaria didn't walk away from love. She walked away from what love became when honesty was no longer part of it. If you've ever had to choose yourself, even when it hurt, if you believe silence can be betrayal too, if you think truth should never be delayed when it comes to family, tell us in the comments, would you have walked out or stayed to forgive? Tap that like button if you're feeling Zaria's strength. Subscribe to follow this emotional journey. And don't forget to share this story with someone who needs to hear it. The first delivery came on a Monday. A dozen white peonies arranged in a low crystal vase. Zaria recognized the florist. Same shop that did the bouquet on her birthday last year, the one he surprised her with after a conference call ran late. This time, no note. Just her name on a tag, handwritten. She left them on the counter at the front desk. The second came the next day. A book, first edition, vintage. The kind of thing only Aunt Della would recognize. A copy of I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings in Perfect Condition, shipped from a rare dealer in Boston. Zaria paused. She ran her hand over the spine, then slid it onto the shelf near the break room without a word. By Wednesday, it was lunch. Her assistant poked her head into the back room. Zaria? A delivery guy's here. Says you need to sign. Zaria came out, eyebrows raised. The man smiled awkwardly. "Ma'am, I've got a document from Dane International. Private courier." She took it without signing. Back in the back room, she unfolded it slowly. A donation certificate. $1 million. To the Harlem Women's Wellness Initiative, her foundation, anonymous donor. But the bottom line was clear. The payment came from an account linked to Dane Holdings. She didn't need confirmation. Zaria folded the paper once, then twice, then dropped it into the shredder without blinking. A moment later, her assistant knocked. "Should I send a thank you to the sender?" Zaria answered calmly, "No. They know I don't want silence bought." The assistant nodded and walked out, lips pressed. Zaria sat on the couch, legs curled under her. She wasn't angry anymore. She was clear. Lennox didn't understand. He thought gestures would fix what truth broke. But flowers don't undo deception. Money doesn't replace honesty. And guilt, no matter how well dressed, doesn't deserve the front door. Across town, Lennox stared at his phone like it owed him more answers. His inbox was full. Read receipts? None. Missed calls? Too many to count. He'd rewritten his apology email 7 times. The last version was simple. "Zaria, I know I've done something I can't undo. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to see that I've never stopped choosing you, even when I didn't know how to do it right." Still, no response. He leaned back in his office chair, loosened his tie, and closed his eyes. His assistant buzzed in. "Sir, your 2 o'clock is here. Push it to Friday." "Sir, it's a city zoning board." "I said push it." He disconnected the line. His walls, once filled with blueprints, expansion models, and architectural mock-ups, now felt like noise. He'd spent years building spaces, but had no idea how to rebuild trust. Back in Harlem, Zaria was meeting a new client, a young woman, 24, nervous, nails bitten down to the skin. She stammered at first, but after 10 minutes, she started to unravel. "He told me he didn't tell me about his ex because it wasn't relevant," the woman said, voice shaking. "But how do you trust someone who decides what's relevant for you?" Zaria stayed quiet for a moment, then said, "If someone hides the truth because they're afraid of your reaction, they've already prioritized their comfort over your right to choose." The woman's eyes welled up. Zaria handed her a tissue. "You're not crazy for wanting honesty. You're not needy for needing clarity." Her voice didn't break, but it came from the same wound. That session ended with a long hug, one that the woman initiated, and for the first time in days, Zaria felt something solid beneath her pain. She wasn't unraveling. She was anchoring to truth, to her future child, to a version of herself that no longer accepted anything less than emotional safety. That night, she walked the Harlem blocks as the sun dipped behind the brownstones. No destination, just movement. She paused at a corner flower stand, looked at the tulips, then walked past them. She didn't need gestures anymore. She needed actions that cost vulnerability, not cash. Her baby kicked softly, or maybe it was just a flutter. But it reminded her she wasn't alone. She rubbed her belly and whispered, "I'm doing this for both of us." Friday morning came with a breeze. Zaria unlocked the front door of her wellness center and stepped inside, yawning softly. The scent of sage lingered from last night's grounding session. The space always felt calm, but lately it felt like more than that. It felt sacred. She pulled out her planner, ready to structure her day, when she heard a knock at the glass. It was faint, intentional. She looked up. Lennox stood outside. No suit, no umbrella, no driver waiting curbside. Just him, in a hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. Raindrops clung to his hairline. His hands stayed visible, like he didn't want to startle her. She didn't move at first, but after a few seconds, she unlocked the door. He stepped in slowly, leaving the world and whatever ego he had left outside. Zaria didn't offer him a seat. He didn't ask. They stood facing each other in the reception area, Her arms stayed crossed. His hands stayed in his pockets. "I'm not here to fix it," Lennox said quietly. "I know I can't." Zarya didn't interrupt. He looked around. "You built something beautiful here." She raised a brow. "Don't change the subject." He nodded. "Right." A pause. Then he exhaled. "I haven't been honest in a long time. Not just with you. With everyone. My team, my board, myself." Zarya leaned against the wall, arms still folded. "Why now?" "Because I've lost the only thing that felt real." "You didn't lose me," she said plainly. "You handed me away when you chose silence." That hit. Lennox stepped closer. Not too close. "I kept thinking, if I told you about Evie, you'd see me differently, as a man who messed up, who didn't have his life together. I've spent years perfecting the image, but being perfect made me lie." Zarya blinked. "Being scared doesn't give you permission to control someone's right to know the truth. I know that now. Do you?" Lennox swallowed. "I was wrong. Every day I waited, it got worse. I thought the love I was building with you would be strong enough to hold the secret. But love built on lies isn't love. It's fear." That was closer to what she needed to hear. Still, she said nothing. "I haven't been to the office in 3 days," he admitted. "Why?" "I couldn't walk into a glass building and pretend to lead anyone when I couldn't even show up for you." She didn't soften. She didn't melt. Because pain doesn't dissolve with a few good words. She walked behind the front desk and pulled something out. A folded note. "You sent this 6 months ago," she said, holding it up. "Remember?" He stepped forward. It was a card. "I'll always protect what we build." Zarya held it tightly. "You can't protect what you hide," she said. "You can't build something while burying something else beneath it." Lennox nodded slowly. "I want to rebuild, but this time with nothing hidden." She tilted her head. "Then say her name." He blinked. Zarya waited. "Evie," he said quietly. "She's smart. She loves puzzles. She bites her lip when she concentrates, just like me. And she's asked about you, a lot." Zarya's eyes flickered. "She knows about me. She knows you're someone important. Someone her daddy hurt." Zarya looked down. It wasn't easier now, but it was truer. And truth made space to breathe. She finally asked, "Why didn't you bring her with you today?" "I didn't think I had the right." Zarya looked up, met his eyes, saw the weariness there. "You don't need permission to parent," she said, "but you need transparency to be trusted." Lennox nodded. "What do you need from me?" She paused, then said softly, "Consistency. Not an apology. Not another check. Not one more grand gesture. Show up every time. Not just when it hurts you." He swallowed hard. "Can I check on you? And the baby?" She nodded once. "That's all I needed to know," he said. He turned to leave. No hug, no reaching. But at the door, Zarya's voice stopped him. "I don't hate you." He turned around slowly. "I hate what you did, but not who you are, or who you're becoming. I see the shift, and that matters, but I'm not ready to invite it in yet." Lennox nodded. "I'll wait, however long it takes." She didn't respond, but she didn't close the door either, and when he stepped out into the rain, she watched him go. Not with bitterness, but with boundaries. That night, Zarya stood at the mirror in her back room. She lifted her shirt gently and ran her fingers along the curve of her stomach. "I told him the truth today," she whispered. "That's what I'll teach you too." The baby kicked softly, and for the first time in weeks, Zarya let a single tear fall. Not from pain, but from relief. Zarya sat at her desk on a quiet Tuesday morning, balancing a half-eaten apple on her belly and typing case notes between sips of lemon water. Her center had grown busier over the past 2 weeks. Word spread. Women came, not because they knew her story, but because they could feel her strength in the silence. There was no press release, no announcement, But when a woman shows up fully for herself, the world senses it. And Zaria had started showing up, not as someone's wife, not as someone hiding pain, but as someone walking through it with both hands open. She'd moved from the back room of the center to a small one-bedroom apartment a block away, modest, furnished with soft throws and warm lights. A crib stood in the corner of the bedroom, unassembled but already loved. She bought it herself. Didn't ask Lennox for anything. He had tried, of course. More deliveries, more voicemails. He offered to pay for the nursery, hire a private prenatal doula, send a chef for her meal prep. Zaria declined them all, kindly but firmly. What she wanted couldn't be outsourced. She wanted stillness, safety, her own voice, and control over how her daughter would be raised, not with lies wrapped in love, but with truth that didn't require permission. That morning, her assistant knocked gently. "You have a 10 a.m. reschedule." And, "A guest in the lobby." Zaria looked up. "A guest?" The girl nodded. "He said he'd wait outside if you didn't want him in." Zaria didn't ask who. She already knew. Lennox stood across the street, hands in pockets, shoulders hunched. No driver, no jacket, just waiting. Zaria stepped outside, closed the door behind her. "Did you make an appointment?" she asked. His lips curved slightly. "Didn't know I needed one." "You do now." He nodded once. "I won't stay long," he said. "I just came to say I heard you." Zaria didn't soften. She didn't harden either. She listened. "You said you needed consistency. I'm not showing up with flowers anymore, or money, or plans. I'm just here, one step at a time." She said nothing. He shifted. "I know this isn't about earning anything. It's about proving I've changed, even if I never get another chance with you." That landed. Zaria looked past him, toward the cafe down the street. "Walk with me," she said. They moved quietly, no arms touching, no steps in sync. Just two people breathing in the same air for the first time in weeks. At the cafe she ordered tea. He got black coffee. They sat at a window seat, and for 5 full minutes, neither said a word. Finally, Zaria spoke. "Do you know what peace means to me now?" Lennox looked at her. "Tell me." "It means no more waiting for someone else to do right by me before I start healing." He nodded slowly. "I'm not here to be your redemption story," she added. "And I'm not trying to punish you either. But I have to love my child with a clean heart. And that means not letting resentment raise her." "I understand," he said. "And I respect that." Zaria stared into her tea. "She'll know you. I won't keep her from you. But the way she knows you will depend on who you become." Lennox's eyes glistened. "You don't have to love me again," he said quietly. "But I'll spend every day being the kind of man you don't have to protect yourself from." That was the first thing he'd said that didn't sound rehearsed. Zaria finished her tea, then stood. "I have clients," she said, "but thank you for coming without noise." Lennox nodded once more. As she turned to leave, he didn't follow, didn't reach. He watched her go, and for the first time, he didn't feel entitled to her return. He felt grateful she even stopped to speak. Back at her office, Zaria paused before opening the door. She placed a hand over her belly. "You'll have the kind of love that's honest," she whispered, "even when it's hard." Inside, a woman waited in the lobby, early 30s, tears staining her face. Zaria walked toward her. No hesitation. She was ready. Because peace isn't a destination. It's a choice you make. Every time someone hands you pain, and you hand back clarity. The invitation came by text, not from Lennox. "Ha, Nina. Hi, Zaria. I know this is unusual, but I wanted to ask if we could talk. Just us, woman to woman. Only if you're open to it." Zaria stared at the screen for a long time. She remembered Nina clearly, her elegance, the way she stood tall in Lennox's office that day. There had been no apology, no hostility either, just brutal honesty. "He's my daughter's father." Zaria had played that moment in her mind so many times. But now, Weeks had passed. Time had softened some edges. And more than anything, Zaria was tired of carrying assumptions in silence. So she texted back. Zaria, 1 hour, neutral place. Golden Oak Cafe on 118th. The cafe was quiet that morning. Zaria chose a table near the back, out of view but not hidden. She sipped ginger tea and rubbed her belly slowly, steadying her breath. Nina walked in 10 minutes later. Long coat, no makeup, hair pulled back. She didn't wear intimidation today. She wore truth. Zaria gave a single nod. Nina sat down. "Thank you," Nina said quietly. "I wasn't sure if you'd respond." Zaria looked her in the eye. "Neither was I." Nina folded her hands. "I didn't come to ask for anything. I didn't come to defend him, or myself." Zaria raised a brow slightly. "Then why?" Nina's voice dropped. "Because I know what it's like to be blindsided, and I don't want either of our daughters growing up in the shadow of silence." That disarmed Zaria more than she expected. Nina continued. "You didn't deserve to find out the way you did, and I didn't know he never told you. I assumed," she paused, "wrongly." Zaria sipped her tea. "He told me she was from a time before me, that it wasn't emotional." Nina gave a small laugh. "Sad, not bitter." "It wasn't a relationship," Nina admitted. "We weren't in love. It was one night. And when I told him I was pregnant, I didn't ask her anything, but he showed up." Zaria listened, arms crossed. Nina glanced at her. Evie knows who her father is. And now she knows she might have a sister. Zaria blinked. "You told her?" she asked. Nina said softly. "After that day. She's not blind. She remembers your face. She asked if you were Daddy's special person. I couldn't lie." Zaria looked down at the table. "She'll know, Sayla," Zaria said, her voice steady. "I won't raise my child to believe her sister is an accident." Nina exhaled deeply. "Thank you. I didn't say I forgive everything," Zaria added. "I wouldn't believe you if you did," Nina replied with a small smile. "But thank you anyway." A silence passed between them. Not awkward, just necessary. Zaria finally asked, "What's he like?" "With her?" Nina smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Gentle, present. He reads her stories like he's narrating a movie, makes up voices, carries her on his shoulders when she's tired. He doesn't always know what to say, but when she cries, he sits on the floor beside her until she stops. He doesn't rush her. Zaria stared at the wall for a moment. "He was never rushed with me either," she said quietly. Until it came to the truth. Another silence. Then Nina stood, reached into her coat pocket, and pulled out a folded envelope. "This isn't money," she said, sliding it across. "It's a letter from Evie." She drew a picture. "It's for the baby." Zaria hesitated, then took the envelope. Nina grabbed her bag. "I'll go now." She paused before leaving. "Our daughters don't have to carry our silence. Let's not give them that kind of inheritance." Then she walked out. Zaria waited until she got back to her apartment to open the envelope. Inside was a piece of folded construction paper full of scribbles. A crayon drawing, 2 small girls holding hands, one in a pink dress, the other in purple. Below it, in crooked letters, "To my baby sister. Love, Evie." Zaria pressed her hand to her mouth. She didn't cry, but she sat on the couch for a long time, the drawing in her lap, her belly rising under her palm. "I'll raise you with truth," she whispered, "and I'll protect your peace, even when it's uncomfortable." That night, she placed the drawing on the dresser beside the crib, and for the first time she didn't feel like she was walking alone. Meanwhile, Lennox sat in his office, staring at the same version of the letter. Evie had made 2 copies, one for her baby sister, one for him. He held it like it was made of glass. On his desk sat a checklist titled Evie and Sayla, "What I owe, but today." He didn't add tasks. He added one word: transparency. Then he leaned back in his chair and whispered to himself, "Earn it." It was supposed to be a normal day. Zaria wore flats, a soft knit sweater that stretched gently over her belly, and a calm heart. Her morning client had cancelled. She took it as a sign, a rare pocket of time just for herself. She needed it. The third trimester had arrived quietly, bringing swollen feet, sleepless nights, and occasional dizziness she refused to complain about. She moved slow, ate well, meditated every night before bed. But pregnancy has its own timeline, and sometimes the body says enough without warning. Zaria stepped off the curb at 125th and waited for the downtown train. She planned to grab groceries, maybe stop by the fabric shop near Fulton for curtains. Small, manageable things that gave her a sense of control. The platform wasn't crowded, but it wasn't quiet either. The train's delay announcement echoed overhead. She leaned against a pillar. The world tilted. At first, she thought it was the train rumbling from below. But then her knees buckled, and everything blurred. A man nearby shouted, "Mom, hey, are you all right?" Zaria tried to respond, but the words wouldn't form. Her breath came shallow. Her fingers reached instinctively for her belly, then the cold concrete. The last thing she saw was someone's coat rushing toward her. Then darkness. When she opened her eyes, fluorescent lights stabbed the ceiling above her. 4 in her arm. Beeping machines nearby. Hospital. The sheets smelled sterile. Her body felt heavier than she remembered. A nurse leaned over her. "You're awake. That's good." Zaria blinked. "The baby." "Heartbeat steady," the nurse said. "We ran full checks." "You fainted. Blood pressure spiked." Zaria exhaled. Relief and fear twisted in her chest. The nurse adjusted her monitor. "Do you know your emergency contact?" she asked gently. Zaria tried to sit up. "Lennox." The nurse nodded. "We called him. He's already here." Zaria's pulse jumped. "He didn't come in," the nurse clarified. "But he's just outside. Said he'd wait until you said yes." Zaria stared at the ceiling. For a moment, she considered saying no. But this wasn't about pride, not today. Let him in. The door opened a minute later. Lennox stepped in quietly. Hoodie, dark jeans, hair messy. He looked like he hadn't slept. Zaria didn't speak. Neither did he. He just stood there, gripping the edge of the chair like it was anchoring him. She finally whispered, "I didn't think this would happen. I felt fine." Lennox nodded. "I know." He sat down slowly. "Was it the stress?" he asked. Zaria closed her eyes. "Maybe. Maybe it's just the body doing what it wants." "I should have been there. You've said that before. I mean it every time." She turned her face toward him. "Then stop waiting for emergencies to act like you love me." Lennox's breath caught. "I didn't come to be a hero," he said softly. "I came because I was scared." Zaria's fingers grazed her belly. "So was I." A long silence stretched between them. Finally, she asked, "What did they tell you?" "That your pressure spiked, you collapsed, that the baby was okay, but they wanted to keep you overnight." Zaria nodded. "They said I should stay nearby," he added, "in case anything changes." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You don't have to." He shook his head. "I want to." She didn't answer, but she didn't argue either. That night, the hospital room was still. Lennox pulled the guest recliner close to her bed. He didn't speak. He didn't touch her. He just stayed. When Zaria woke at 2:17 a.m. from a nurse's check, she looked over and saw him, asleep in the chair, chin resting against his palm, body folded uncomfortably. He could have gone home, but he didn't. She watched him for a long time, then turned back to the ceiling and whispered, "Don't confuse presence with peace, Zaria. Remember what brought you here." But part of her, deep down, still hoped that maybe this time presence would lead to peace. It started with a cramp. Zaria shifted in the hospital bed, assuming it was just another contraction from the pressure spike. The nurse had told her to expect some discomfort. Her body was adjusting, but then the cramp deepened and didn't stop. She pressed the call button. Lennox stirred from the recliner. His hoodie was wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed. "You okay?" She shook her head. "Something's off." The nurse arrived seconds later, already checking her vitals. "Let's just take a look." Her tone changed almost instantly. "I need to call OB now. You're dilating faster than we expected." Zaria gripped the blanket. "What does that mean?" The nurse moved quickly. "It means the baby's coming. Sooner than planned." Lennox stood, heart pounding. "Is she early? Is it dangerous?" "She's early. Not dangerously, but we need to move fast," the nurse said, pressing a call button above the bed. "Her vitals are still stable, but the baby is ready." Zaria looked at Lennox. Not panicked, not afraid, but present. "I don't want to do this alone," she whispered. His voice cracked. "You're not alone." The room changed within minutes. More staff, sterile gowns, lights. Zaria was wheeled down the hall. Lennox stayed by her side the entire time. The delivery room was warm, but time moved cold. Zaria's pain came in waves, sharp, fast, unrelenting. No epidural, no prep. Her body didn't wait for permission. Lennox held her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her wrist like he used to in the mornings. But now, it wasn't habit. It was grounding. She screamed once, the kind of scream that split skin and pride. He didn't flinch. He didn't say breathe. He just stayed. "I can't," she choked out during the last push. "You already are," he whispered. And then the room was filled with crying. A new kind of cry, high-pitched, raw, alive. The doctor lifted the baby, red and slippery, still connected by the cord that tied her to Zaria's body and sacrifice. "It's a girl," someone said. Zaria already knew. They placed the baby on her chest. Lennox stepped back. Tears ran down his face silently. He didn't reach for the child. He didn't make a speech. He just watched the woman he broke give life to someone whole. Zaria looked down at her daughter. Her fingers traced the tiny cheek, the full lips, the small curl forming at the hairline. "She looks like herself," she whispered. Lennox smiled gently. "She looks like strength." Later that night, Zaria lay in a quiet recovery room. The baby was sleeping beside her in a bassinet, wrapped tight in pink. Lennox stood near the window, hands in his pockets. "I didn't name her yet," Zaria said. He turned. "That's your choice." "No," she said softly. "Ours." He came closer, slowly. "Do you have something in mind?" "Sayela," Zaria said. "Meaning?" "Peace," in Hebrew and in Somali. Lennox nodded, eyes glistening. "It's perfect." She turned toward him. "I don't need you to be a provider," she said. "I already provide. I know. I don't need you to buy anything. I won't. What I need," she said carefully, "is for her to grow up with a father who's not afraid of truth, who doesn't disappear when it's messy." He took a step closer. "I've already lost one version of us, Zaria. I won't lose what matters now. Not again." Zaria looked down at Sayla. "She doesn't know you yet. I'll earn her trust, day by day." Zaria's voice lowered. "And mine?" He paused. "I'll show up. Until you no longer have to ask me to." She nodded once, then leaned back, not in surrender, but in peace. Outside the hospital window, the city kept moving. Cabs, lights, people, but inside, something rare settled in. No lies, no begging, no pretending, just a man, a woman, and a child who would one day ask how they began. And this time, they'd have an answer. 2 days after delivery, Zaria was discharged from Mount Sinai. No press, no family parade. Just her, the nurse, and Sayla bundled close to her chest. The wind outside was light. October in New York, crisp but kind. Lennox was already waiting at the curb, not in a town car, in a simple, clean SUV with a baby seat installed. He stepped out when he saw her, moving without hesitation. Can I carry the bag? Zaria hesitated, then handed it over. She strapped Sailor into her seat without help. Lennox watched silently, hands at his side. No corrections, no commands. When they pulled up to her apartment, she expected him to drop her off and leave, but he didn't. He parked, turned to her. Would it be all right if I came in for a little while? I'll leave whenever you ask. Zaria studied him, then nodded. Inside, the apartment smelled of vanilla and chamomile. She lit a soft diffuser the night before she went into labor, and it still lingered. Home wasn't about space. It was about feeling safe there. She placed Sailor in the bassinet by the window. Lennox stood nearby, unsure of what to say. You can sit, she told him. He did. She made tea. The silence was thick, but not tense. When she handed him a cup, she noticed his hands were shaking. You're not used to this version of yourself, she said softly. Lennox looked up. What version? The one who doesn't fix, who just feels. He didn't argue, because it was true. Later that afternoon, Zaria got a text from Nina. Nina, Evie's been asking. She wants to meet her sister. If and when you're ready. Zaria stared at the message. She didn't flinch. She didn't frown. She smiled, because this wasn't about Nina, or Lennox, or what had happened. It was about Sailor and Evie, two girls who didn't ask for secrets or grown-up mistakes. Just a chance. She looked at Lennox. Evie wants to meet her. He sat up straighter. Really? I'm okay with it. He blinked. Are you sure? I don't want them growing up with fences they didn't build. Lennox swallowed hard. I'll call Nina. The next morning, they met at Riverside Park. The Hudson stretched wide behind them. A gentle breeze tugged at Sailor's pink blanket as she lay sleeping in Zaria's arms. Evie arrived in a mustard cardigan and jeans, holding a small bouquet of tulips. She spotted Zaria first, paused, then walked forward with careful steps. Zaria knelt to meet her at eye level. Hi, Evie. Evie nodded. Hi, Zaria smiled. Is that for your sister? Evie held up the flowers. I picked the pink ones. Zaria reached for them. She's going to love that. Evie peered into the blanket. Her name's Sailor, she asked. Zaria nodded. It means peace. Evie looked up. She looks soft. She is. Lennox stood nearby, arms folded, watching the moment unfold like a gift he didn't deserve but hoped to preserve. Nina approached from behind, giving Zaria a soft, respectful nod. No tension, no past, just peace. Evie reached out, gently touched Sailor's tiny fist and whispered, Hi, baby sister. Zaria's throat tightened, but she held steady, because this was the beginning of something new. Later, as they all sat on the bench, Lennox looked at Zaria. Thank you, he said. She shook her head. Don't thank me for doing what's right. He paused. What should I thank you for? For giving them a chance to love each other without carrying our mistakes. Zaria didn't expect him to come back the next morning, or the morning after that, but he did. Always quiet, always early. Always asking, do you need anything today? She never said yes. But she didn't say no. Sometimes he brought groceries. Sometimes a meal. He never stayed longer than an hour unless she asked him to. And when he held Sailor, he held her like she was the only thing he couldn't buy. That mattered more than flowers ever had. One Thursday morning, Zaria woke up to the sound of soft cooing in the next room. She blinked twice, rubbed her eyes, then pushed up from bed. She hadn't heard Sailor cry. That was unusual. She stepped into the living room. There he was. Lennox, seated on the couch with Sailor cradled against his chest, gently rocking. He was singing, low, off-key, but sweet. Zaria didn't interrupt. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, listening. He hadn't noticed her yet. He was too busy being present. Not performative, not rehearsed. Just there. That afternoon, Zaria stepped outside for the first time alone since the birth. Lennox offered to stay with Sailor. She hesitated. then said yes, not because she needed a break, but because she wanted to trust, even if it was just for 30 minutes. She returned to find her daughter asleep, bottle washed, burp cloth folded, Lennox sitting in silence beside the bassinet, scrolling through his phone like a dad doing a late shift. Zaria smiled. He looked up. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Thank you," she said quietly. He didn't make a speech. He just said, "Any time." On Sunday, she invited him to stay for lunch. No candles, no music, just leftovers and paper napkins. They ate in silence for a bit, then talked lightly about childhoods. Zaria told him how her aunt used to read her poetry before bed instead of fairy tales. She said poems let you imagine without lying. Lennox smiled. "She sounds like a good woman." "She is." He hesitated. "Do you think she'd ever want to meet Sailor?" Zaria thought for a moment. "Eventually. When the time is right." Lennox nodded. "I'd like that." She looked up. "This is what I needed." He tilted his head. "What?" No pressure, no pity, just rhythm. He smiled. "I'm learning rhythm. You're learning to stay." That landed. That night, Zaria stood at the window after Lennox left. Sayala lay sleeping in her crib. Zaria whispered to herself, "Maybe love doesn't always come back with roses. Maybe sometimes it comes back with warm bottles, quiet hands, and no need to be forgiven." She hadn't decided anything yet. Not about them, not about what they could be, but for the first time, she wasn't guarding herself like a fortress. She was resting, and rest was a kind of healing too. Meanwhile, across town, Lennox sat in his apartment alone. He didn't pour whiskey, didn't turn on the news. He just pulled out a blank journal. At the top of the page he wrote, "What she needs from me." Then, underneath it, honesty, patience, no fixing, no performing, presence, peace. And below that, one final line, "Earn it quietly, or don't expect it at all." He closed the journal. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a CEO. He felt like a man who still had a chance. Have you ever had to rebuild trust one quiet moment at a time? Not with apologies, but with presence. Zaria didn't need promises. She needed rhythm, consistency, peace she didn't have to beg for. And Lennox, he stopped performing. He started staying. If you've ever chosen yourself first, even with love still in your heart, if you believe trust isn't earned through gifts but through showing up, drop a comment. Would you give someone like Lennox another chance, or close the door for good? Tap like if Zaria's strength speaks to you. Subscribe for the next chapter in this powerful journey. Share this video with someone who believes real love isn't loud. It's consistent. The knock came just before noon. Zaria was nursing Sayala, her robe tied loosely around her waist, soft music playing in the background. She wasn't expecting anyone. Lennox had already visited that morning and left quietly after folding laundry and restocking baby wipes. When the knock came again, slower, firmer, Zaria paused. She already knew. Only one person knocked like that. She adjusted Sayala in her arms, padded softly to the door, and opened it. Aunt Della. The older woman didn't waste time with greetings. She stepped inside, closed the door behind her, and studied the room like she was auditing peace. "You look tired," she said, setting her bag down. "I am," Zaria replied. Della's gaze dropped to the sleeping baby in Zaria's arms. "She looks just like you did." Zaria smiled softly. "You think so?" Della pulled off her coat. "Same forehead, same serious mouth, same way you curled your fist when you were mad at the world." She didn't ask to hold Sayla. She waited until Zaria offered, and she did. Della took the baby gently, sat down, and rocked without speaking. The silence between them wasn't cold. It was sacred. "Is he still around?" Della asked after a while. Zaria knew who she meant. "Yes," she said, "but not like before." Della raised an eyebrow. No suits, no money talk, just slow mornings, bottles, groceries. Zaria braced herself. What? She asked. Della looked her straight in the eye. I didn't come here to judge you, baby. I came here to ask you one thing. Zaria nodded. Della leaned forward. What do you want now? Zaria blinked. It wasn't the question she expected. Not, are you going back? Not, has he changed? Not, what's next? Just that. What do you want now? She opened her mouth, then closed it. I don't know. Della smiled. Then that's your first assignment. Zaria sighed. It's not that simple. It is. It just hurts more than you thought it would. She stood, paced the small living room, still holding the baby with ease. You don't owe him a reunion, she said. And you don't owe yourself a punishment either. But you owe that child clarity. I'm giving her that. Good, Della said. But what about you? Zaria looked away. I spent so long thinking peace came from removing him, she whispered. Now he's not the problem, and I still don't feel clear. That's because clarity isn't the absence of pain, Della said. It's knowing what you're living for now. Zaria took Sayla back in her arms, kissed her forehead, and exhaled. I want her to grow up free, then start by living free in front of her. Zaria nodded. I'm not rushing, she said softly. I'm just breathing. Della smiled, eyes soft. Then you're doing just fine. That evening, Lennox texted, Lennox, how's Sayla? Do you need anything tonight? Zaria stared at the message for a while, then replied, Zaria, we're good. Thank you. Maybe come by Saturday. Aunt's in town. Lennox, of course. Let me know if anything changes. No pressure. No emojis. Just rhythm. She tucked the phone away, turned off the lamp, and rocked Sayla to sleep under the soft hum of jazz. What do I want now? She whispered to herself. And for the first time, she didn't answer out of fear. She just stayed in the question. Until the answer came. Saturday came with soft light and cool air. Zaria placed a blanket across the living room floor, while Sayla babbled from her rocker nearby. Aunt Della sipped her tea in silence, eyes scanning the apartment like she was still collecting data from Thursday's question, what do you want now? The knock came right at 10. Lennox stood at the door, wearing jeans and a navy sweater. He looked more like a man coming home from the market than a CEO. Zaria opened the door. She's fed, but you can take the second shift. He smiled gently. I brought wipes and a pack of onesies. She nodded and stepped aside. Aunt Della stood, smoothed her blouse, and looked Lennox up and down. Not hostile, not impressed either, just measuring the moment. You must be Della, Lennox said with quiet respect. She nodded once. You remember manners. He smiled a little. Zaria said you'd be visiting. She say I don't do small talk too? He let out a quiet laugh. She didn't need to. Della looked him over. You nervous? Good. Don't be. Just be honest. Lennox nodded and stepped forward. Sayla's eyes lit up when he picked her up from the rocker. She made a small sound, not a cry, but something close to a giggle. Her little fists grabbed at the strings of his hoodie. He held her like she was fragile and familiar all at once. Della watched him, not his hands. His face, how he lowered his head, how he didn't check his phone, how he whispered nonsense to calm her when she started to fuss. Zaria didn't say much. She watched them both. For the first time, all 3 generations of her life, past, present and future, stood in one room. Later, while Lennox changed a diaper in the back room, Della turned to Zaria. He's not performing. Zaria blinked. What? He's not performing. He's just here. Zaria exhaled. I don't know what that means yet. Della nodded. You don't have to, but you should know the difference. Zaria stayed quiet. Della continued. I've seen men show up with flowers and speeches and lies. They want the image of forgiveness more than the work of it. She glanced toward the room where Lennox was humming to Sailor. That man isn't trying to win you back. Zaria raised a brow. Then what's he doing? Della looked her in the eye. He's trying to stay, even if it doesn't get him anything. That sat in Zaria's chest like a warm stone. Not heavy, just true. When Lennox returned, Sailor resting on his shoulder, Della stood. "I'm headed out," she said, grabbing her coat. Lennox stepped forward. "It was good to meet you." Della gave him a long look. "Keep showing up, son. Not because she sees it. Because she needs it to be real whether she's watching or not." He nodded. Zaria walked her to the door. "You all right?" Della asked quietly as they stood in the hallway. Zaria nodded. "You trust yourself?" Zaria paused, then whispered, "I'm learning too." Della smiled. "Then you'll know what to do." She kissed Zaria's cheek and left. That evening, Lennox offered to cook dinner. Zaria didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. So he did. He cooked while she nursed. He washed while she rocked. He didn't try to talk too much. He didn't ask what they were. He didn't push. When the evening ended, he packed the leftovers in glass containers, wiped the counters, and kissed Sailor's forehead before slipping on his coat. At the door, he paused. "I don't want to overstay." Zaria looked up from the couch. "You didn't?" He held her gaze for a second longer than usual, then nodded and left. That night, Zaria lay in bed and whispered, "He's not trying to fix me. He's just being here." And maybe that's what she'd needed all along. Not a man to undo the pain, but one who wouldn't run from it. Zaria had been thinking about the conversation for days. She rehearsed parts of it while washing bottles, while folding onesies, while brushing her teeth, not because she was unsure of what to say, but because she knew the weight it carried. This wasn't about forgiveness. This was about structure, about defining the space Lennox could now occupy, and the ones he couldn't. When he arrived that Friday evening, Sailor was already napping. The apartment smelled of fresh citrus. Zaria had just mopped the floors. She wore leggings, a loose top, and no makeup. No armor. Lennox stepped in quietly, holding a small book, a children's bedtime story he found in an old Harlem bookstore. Zaria accepted it with a nod. "She'll love this," he smiled. "She's already started grabbing the pages when I read." Zaria motioned to the table. "Sit down. I want to talk." He pulled the chair out gently, sat, and folded his hands in front of him. She sat across from him. Calm, clear. "This isn't about us," she said. "This is about Sailor." He nodded. "I'm building a life around peace," she continued. "And peace doesn't happen without boundaries. I understand. I don't want her to grow up with guessing games," Zaria said. "If you're going to be part of her life, consistently, then we need structure." "I agree." She pulled out a printed sheet from a folder. Lennox's eyebrows lifted slightly. It was a shared parenting schedule. Simple. Not legal, not defensive. Just clear. "Right now she needs me most of the time," Zaria said. "But you should have standing days. Time where you're responsible, not just visiting." He studied it. Fridays, Sunday mornings, one overnight, every 2 weeks, starting month 5. "I'll take whatever you give me," he said. Zaria leaned forward slightly. "This isn't about taking, it's about sharing. She's not a part-time moment. She's a full-time presence." He nodded. Zaria continued. "There will be no decisions without mutual agreement. No school changes, no moves, no introductions to strangers." "Of course," he said. "No big birthday gestures that confuse her about love. No silence when something's hard." "Absolutely." Zaria folded her hands. "And no assuming this makes us a family again. That's not what this is." His face shifted slightly, but he nodded. "I hear you. I'm not punishing you," she said. "I'm protecting me. And her. You don't have to explain that." "I do, because I need to say it out loud, so I don't forget it the next time you make me smile." That line landed. Lennox looked her directly in the eye. "You'll never have to guess my intentions again. You won't have to pull the truth out of me like teeth." Zarya took a long breath. "Then this can work." He nodded. "Do you want to keep a copy?" she asked, sliding the schedule toward him. "I already memorized it." She allowed a small smile, but nothing more. Later, as he changed Sayla's diaper, Zarya leaned against the doorframe, watching. She wasn't wondering if he loved her. She wasn't wondering if he wanted to be there. She was watching the man she once trusted, not for his promises, but for his follow-through. And for the first time she believed it might be possible. Not reconciliation, but real parenting, without wounds guiding it. That night, Zarya journaled before bed. She wrote, "He didn't argue with my terms. He didn't ask for more than I offered. He didn't bring up us. He didn't try to fix. He just accepted what peace required. And that's the first thing he's ever done right. On time." Saturday started slow. Zarya packed Sayla's bag with bottles, wipes, a backup outfit, and a note that listed everything from nap times to her preferred lullaby. Lennox listened carefully, didn't interrupt once. "She usually goes down around 10:30, Zarya said, buckling Sayla's tiny carrier straps. "But she'll fight sleep if you keep talking." He smiled. "So, she's already like you." Zarya gave him a look. "Don't get cute." He held up his hands. "Understood." Before they left, she knelt in front of Sayla and whispered, "Behave for Daddy." Then she handed the bag to Lennox. "She has everything she needs. Except me. I'll do my best," he said softly. The apartment he once used only for weekend retreats had changed. No more glass sculptures or abstract art. Now it held a playmat, a high chair, and a pink pacifier that had somehow ended up on the marble countertop. He laid Sayla down on the soft rug, sat beside her, and started reading, aloud from a board book about sleepy bears and moonlight kisses. Her little fingers reached for his face. She giggled when he made voices. Everything was smooth. Until it wasn't. At 11:14 a.m., she started crying. Not the fussy cry, the sharp, sudden one. He checked her diaper. Dry. Offered a bottle. She turned her head. He held her, rocked her, walked the room. But she kept crying. Then her skin felt warm. Too warm. He checked the forehead again. She was burning up. His hands trembled as he reached for the baby thermometer. 100.9. He tried not to panic. Called Zarya. She answered on the second ring. "Everything okay?" "She's got a fever," Lennox said. "She's crying non-stop. I don't know if it's something I did." "Text me your address," she said instantly. "I'm on my way." When Zarya arrived 20 minutes later, she didn't storm in. She didn't yell. She found Lennox pacing, shirt wrinkled, hair tousled, holding Sayla close, whispering, "I'm here, baby. I'm here." Zarya walked over, placed a hand on her daughter's back, then on Lennox's shoulder. "I've got her," she said. He let go like it hurt. Zarya sat on the couch, cradling Sayla. She checked the temp again. 100.6 now. "She's teething," she said calmly. "It causes low-grade fevers sometimes." Lennox stared at her. "I should have known that." "You've never done this before," she replied. "And you called me. That's all I needed you to do." He dropped into a chair, head in his hands. I panicked. She wouldn't stop crying. I thought I was failing. Zarya looked up. "You didn't fail. You learned." He exhaled. "I didn't want you to see me like that." "I did." She stood, rocked Sayla gently, and walked over. "She's okay. And so are you." He looked up at her. His eyes didn't ask for approval. They asked for understanding. Zarya nodded. "You can keep going," she said. "But next time, trust yourself a little more." Lennox blinked, then whispered, "How do you forgive yourself when you get it wrong?" Zarya stared at him, then said softly, "You don't wait for someone else to tell you it's okay. You just keep showing up better." That night, Lennox stayed to help her get Sila to bed. He didn't overtalk. He didn't try to explain away the panic. He held the bottle steady, sang the Sleepy Bear song again, and this time, when Zaria looked at him, she didn't see the man who lied. She saw the father learning how to stay through fear. And that mattered, not just for Sila, but for her too. Zaria hadn't planned on visiting Nina. It had been weeks since their cafe meeting. Cordial, honest, closed. But something had shifted after Sila's fever scare. Something about how Evie touched her sister's hand. How Lennox panicked, but didn't run. How it all reminded Zaria that co-parenting wasn't just about checklists and time slots. It was about shared dignity. And the girls? They were already bonded, without knowing the weight of what tied them. So, Zaria texted, "Zaria, would you be open to a visit? I'd like to talk. Just us." Nina, "Yes." "Tomorrow? After 2? Zaria, "Perfect." The apartment Nina lived in was bright, open layout, toys in one corner, a modest bookshelf in the other. It wasn't lavish, it was lived in. Nina answered the door barefoot, in sweats, holding a half-full mug of lukewarm coffee. "Come in," she said. "Ignore the mess." Zaria stepped inside, Sayla snug in her carrier. Nina reached out instinctively and unbuckled the top clip. "May I?" Zaria hesitated, then nodded. Nina picked up Sayla gently and held her close like she'd done it before. "She still smells like baby powder and lavender." She smiled. "Evie smelled like pancakes for the first year." Zaria chuckled. "I believe that." They sat at the kitchen table. No tension, just space. Nina set Sayla in a swing chair and poured them both water. Zaria cleared her throat. "I didn't come here to talk about Lennox," she said. Nina raised a brow. "Good. I'm tired of talking about men." They both smiled. Zaria folded her hands. "I came to talk about them." She nodded toward the swing, then gestured toward a framed photo of Evie taped to the fridge with glitter stickers. "I don't want to raise Sayla on one side of a fence." Nina leaned back, serious now. "Neither do I." Zaria's voice softened. "But I also don't want to force something that looks like family when it isn't built yet." Nina nodded slowly. "You're thinking long game." "I'm thinking legacy," Zaria said. "Because if we don't create the narrative, the world will. And it won't be kind." Silence. Then Nina said, "My daughter doesn't need to see your daughter as competition. And mine doesn't need to feel like a secret's shadow," Zaria added. They both exhaled at the same time. It wasn't a truce. It was an agreement. Zaria looked up. "What does Evie know?" "She knows she has a sister. She knows you're kind. She knows her dad made a mistake, but she doesn't know guilt. I made sure of that." Zaria felt her throat tighten. "Thank you." Nina sipped her water. "What do you want this to look like?" she asked. "Time together, naturally, no forced holidays, but shared birthdays, some Saturdays, space to play, to bond, to know they're not alone in the world." Nina nodded. "And us? We don't have to be friends," Zaria said, "but we should be united. Not for us, for them." Nina looked down, thought, then reached for her phone, pulled up a calendar. "I'm open every third weekend," she said. "We can start small." Zaria smiled. Sayla babbled from the swing. Across the room, Evie's artwork lined the wall, finger-painted flowers and a drawing of 2 girls holding hands. Zaria stared at it. "Evie drew that last week," Nina said. "She said it was her and the baby with the soft eyes." Zaria placed a hand on her chest. She remembered. She always does. They walked Zaria to the elevator together. Nina held Sayla one last time. "She's lucky to have you." Zaria looked at her. "She's lucky to have both of us on her side." Nina smiled. The elevator doors closed, and for the first time, Zaria didn't feel like a woman surviving betrayal. She felt like a mother, building a bridge. The plan was simple: a picnic in Central Park. No photographers, no headlines, just a blanket, a stroller, and a few containers of cut fruit. Lennox had packed a small basket with Evie's favorite snacks and Zaria's lemon water. When they arrived, Evie ran ahead to find a shady spot. Zaria followed, Sila resting quietly in her carrier against her chest. Lennox held the blanket. No one spoke about what the outing meant, but they all felt it. Evie picked wildflowers, while Zaria rocked Sila in her arms. The baby's eyes fluttered open and shut as the breeze danced through the trees. "She likes the wind," Zaria murmured. "She gets that from you," Lennox said. Zaria smiled. "I was a spring baby. April. My aunt said I used to stop crying every time the windows opened." Evie ran over with a handful of petals. "These are for the baby." Zaria accepted them. "She'll keep them forever." Evie leaned in. "Can I hold her?" Lennox froze. Zaria looked at her, then gently nodded. She shifted Sila into Evie's small arms, guiding her hands underneath. "Support the head," Zaria whispered. Evie nodded with wide eyes. "She's small," she said, "but she smells like baby lotion." Lennox smiled. "That means she's fresh." Evie giggled, then looked up. "Why don't we all live in the same house?" The question came with no warning. Zaria's heart skipped. Lennox sat back slowly. Evie looked between them. "You're both her parents. Like me and Mummy have a house, shouldn't she have one too?" Zaria didn't rush to answer. She leaned forward, looked Evie in the eye. "Sometimes," she said gently, "parents live in different houses not because they love you less, but because it's how they keep peace." Evie thought about that. "Do you still like each other?" Zaria's throat tightened. Lennox looked at Zaria, waited. Zaria nodded slowly. "We respect each other," she said. "And we both love you." "And Sila." Evie looked satisfied with that. She handed the baby back and grabbed her juice pouch. Later, when they walked toward the car, Evie ran ahead. Lennox and Zaria trailed behind. "She's going to ask more questions," he said. "She should." He looked at her. "What if I get it wrong?" "Then we correct it together," Zaria said. "But not by hiding." He nodded. "I've spent most of my life hiding. But they see everything." Zaria's voice softened. "They do, and they listen hardest when we're not speaking." They reached the car. Evie hopped into her booster seat. Sila stirred in her carrier. Zaria buckled her in while Lennox held the door open. Before she got in, Zaria paused. "Today mattered," she said. Lennox met her eyes. "Because it was honest?" "No," she said. "Because no one had to pretend." That night, Zaria sat at her window, watching the skyline flicker. She whispered to herself, "We may not be a couple, but we're not broken either." She looked over at the 2 flowers Evie gave Sila, now sitting in a mason jar on her desk. They were crooked, fading, fragile, but still standing, like them. The hallway lights at Mount Sinai had dimmed for the night. Soft hums from machines echoed around Zaria as she sat quietly in the rocking chair beside Saila's bassinet. Her daughter slept peacefully, a small fist curled beneath her cheek. Zaria watched her chest rise and fall, each breath steady, strong, and present. The NICU nurses had said she was progressing well. She would likely go home within a week. But Zaria wasn't sure what home meant anymore. Harlem felt familiar, safe. Her wellness center was only a few blocks away. Ayana had offered to help her transition back, saying she could stay as long as needed. Still, there was something that hung heavy in Zaria's spirit. Not fear, not even betrayal anymore. It was unfinishedness. Lennox hadn't visited in the past 2 days. After Sila's emergency birth and Zaria's recovery, he'd been there, every hour, every shift. But once Sila stabilized, he gave her space. He hadn't pushed, he hadn't begged. He just quietly stepped back. It should have brought relief, but instead, it brought questions. Had he given up? Or was this what growth looked like? Letting go, even when it hurt. A knock at the NICU door broke her thoughts. It was Nurse Jamila, one of the night shift staff. "Zaria, there's someone in the waiting area." Says he's not here to see the baby, just you. Zaria blinked. Did he give a name? Jamila smiled softly. Didn't need to. Zaria nodded, stood slowly, and kissed Sayla's forehead before stepping into the quiet hallway. Lennox was seated in the far corner of the waiting lounge, coat folded beside him, hands clasped tight. His tie was undone, shirt wrinkled, and his face softer than she remembered, not in the literal sense, but something beneath his eyes. Humility, maybe, or exhaustion that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. She sat across from him without speaking. He looked up, startled she had come. I didn't want to crowd you, he said, but I couldn't leave things there. Zaria folded her hands in her lap. Then say what you came to say. Lennox leaned forward. I've been trying to fix everything. I threw money at problems, offered help where it wasn't asked. But none of that touches the core. She looked at him quietly. I wasn't trying to hurt you, he said. When I kept Evie a secret, I thought I was protecting us. But the truth is, I was protecting myself. From your disappointment, from the shame I felt over my mistake. I was selfish. Zaria didn't flinch. Yes, you were. He nodded. I won't ask for forgiveness. That's not my right. But I'll keep showing up. For Sayla, for Evie, and for whatever chance remains to rebuild something honest with you. No lies, no disappearances, no manipulation. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small worn notebook. The cover had her name written in the corner. Her handwriting. Zaria frowned. Where did you get that? You left it at the brownstone, in your studio. It's your therapy journal. I didn't read past the first page, I swear. I saw this one line. He opened it gently, showing her a page dated a few months before their wedding. Her own words stared back at her. I don't want a perfect man. I want a present one. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not yet. He stood. I'll leave you now. I needed you to know that I see what I broke, and I'll keep working to be someone worthy of standing beside the woman who wrote that. He walked past her, slow, respectful, and Zaria sat still, unsure if what she felt was closure or the start of something trying to be reborn. 2 days later, Sayla was discharged from the NICU. Zaria carried her out wrapped in a warm lavender blanket, her tiny fingers curled around the edge. Ayana drove them home, helped set up a quiet corner of the living room, with a bassinet, diaper station, and bottles lined up in a small warmer. You're doing good, Ayana said, kissing Zaria's cheek. Call me if you need anything. Zaria stood by the window after Ayana left, rocking Sayla gently. The neighborhood buzzed below, kids playing distant music, an ice cream truck rounding the corner. Life had resumed, and somehow hers was still catching up. Later that evening, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hi, this is Marie, Evie's mother. I hope this isn't overstepping. Evie made a card for her sister. She's been asking every day if she can meet her. Zaria stared at the message for a long time, then typed, Let me think about it. I'm not saying no. She didn't owe anyone immediate access to her daughter, but something in her heart knew. Holding on to bitterness would only pass that energy forward. She had seen it in her clients. Women who couldn't move past betrayal and ended up trapped in cycles of fear disguised as control. Zaria wanted better, for Sayla and for herself. That weekend, she sat on the back steps of her wellness center, holding Sayla while the city moved quietly around them. Lennox approached slowly, not in a suit this time, but jeans and a navy pullover. He carried a paper bag with food, veggie wraps from her favorite spot near 116th. She raised a brow. I called Ayana, he said, sheepish, bribed her for the menu. Zaria almost smiled. He sat beside her, not too close. I'm trying to figure out how to be useful without being intrusive, he said, unwrapping a sandwich and placing it beside her. It's harder than it looks. Zaria fed Sayla with one hand, bottle tucked gently, while watching him from the corner of her eye. How's Evie? She asked. He lit up. Good. She's learning sign language now. Wants to be a teacher when she grows up. Zaria nodded slowly. She knows about Sailor, Lennox said. I didn't hide it. I told her she has a baby sister. I told her families can look different, but what matters is love and truth. Even if they take work. Zaria said nothing, but she didn't turn away either. Lennox reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded sheet of paper. He handed it to her. It was a drawing. 2 stick girls. One had curly hair and was holding a small flower. The other held a teddy bear. Their names written above them, Evie and Sailor. Zaria stared at it, not for the artistry, but for what it meant. An innocent heart was already choosing connection before the adults figured out how to repair what they broke. Zaria felt something shift in her. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a door opening. Lennox stood to leave. Thank you for letting me sit here. Zaria didn't stop him, but just before he reached the gate, she called out, next time, bring crayons. Maybe she can color it herself. He turned slowly and nodded. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was hopeful. Zaria stood in front of the full-length mirror, the silk robe cinched tightly at her waist, but nothing could hold in the tremble beneath her skin. The home was quiet, eerily so. Lennox had taken their son, Cairo, to his mother's for the weekend. He thought space would help. That time would make her forget the images she couldn't unsee. But it only gave her silence. And silence was cruel when your heart was screaming. The knock at the door pulled her from thought. It was soft, hesitant. For a moment, she hoped it was Lennox, ready to talk, ready to admit everything without filters or pride. But when she opened it, it wasn't him. It was Noel. Zaria blinked. What are you doing here? Noel gave a small, apologetic smile. I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I needed to talk to you before you make any decisions. Zaria didn't invite her in. She just stepped back silently, letting her enter because curiosity was stronger than rage right now. I didn't come to defend him, Noel said quickly. I came because you deserve to hear it from someone who lived through the lie too. Zaria folded her arms. Then speak. Noel exhaled. It wasn't a long affair. It wasn't even emotional. It happened once, years ago. I was going through a breakup. Lennox was under pressure, and we were both in a bad place. I didn't even tell him I was pregnant until 2 years later. Zaria didn't move. I never tried to make him choose me. I didn't even want his money. Lennox insisted on setting up the trust, and he made it clear from the beginning he was committed to you. Then why hide the child? Because of his world, his father, the name. He thought if it got out, it would ruin everything. Zaria's jaw tightened. He let our marriage carry the weight of honesty while hiding a child that carries his blood. Noel nodded, eyes stinging. He was wrong. I told him that. He wanted to tell you, especially after you lost the baby. But he kept delaying, thinking it wasn't the right time. There never was a right time. Zaria's face broke then, not into tears, but a sad, flat smile. There never is when your truth depends on someone else's pain. They stood in silence for a beat. I came because... She's starting to ask questions, Noel said softly. She's starting to notice when Cairo comes up in the news. She knows he's her brother. Zaria swallowed. Her name? Sarai. The name landed like a whisper of what could have been hers to raise, to know. Another piece of Lennox she didn't even get to love. Noel pulled a small envelope from her coat and handed it over. She wrote this, for him. But I think you should read it too. Zaria didn't open it right away. She nodded once. I won't promise anything. But thank you for coming. Noel paused, eyes full. You were always kind. I hope you won't lose that in all this. When the door shut, Zaria leaned back against it, hands trembling. She looked down at the letter. The handwriting was messy, clearly a child's. She opened it slowly. Dear Daddy, Mom says you're working a lot and can't come to school things, but I hope one day you can. I saw you on TV holding Cairo. He's small, but he looks like me when I was little. I hope he's nice. I want to meet him one day and tell him jokes. I made a picture of us at the zoo. I hope you like it. Love, Sarai. Zaria didn't know when the tears started. They were quiet, steady, and endless. That night, she packed a small suitcase. Not in anger, but in clarity. She wasn't leaving to punish him. She was leaving to find her voice outside his shadow. When Lennox returned the next morning, he knew something was wrong before he opened the door. The scent of lavender lingered, but the warmth was gone. He called out her name. Zaria walked out of the guest room, suitcase in hand. He froze. "Zaria, I need time," she said simply. "Away from this house. Away from the story you built without me. Don't go, please. I'm not divorcing you, Lennox. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just empty. And I can't rebuild myself here." He stepped forward, eyes frantic. "Let me come with you. Let me fix this." She shook her head. "You can't fix something you refuse to face. That's your work now. Mine is remembering who I was before this marriage made me forget." She reached into her coat and pulled out the letter. "She's brave, that little girl. Braver than both of us. You should be worthy of her." And with that she left. 2 months passed. Zaria stayed in Harlem, in the same apartment she once used for her therapy practice. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. The walls were lined with affirmations. She resumed work, slowly. Helping others helped her find herself again. Lennox didn't call. He wrote letters, emails, left voice messages, but never showed up. He honored her boundary, until one day a knock came. It was Sarai and Lennox. Zaria stared at the small girl with thick curls and eyes too familiar. Lennox crouched beside her. She begged me, said she wanted to meet her brother's mommy. Sarai looked up shyly. "Hi, you're pretty, like the princesses on my wall." Zaria smiled softly, kneeling. "And you must be Sarai. I heard you draw great zoo animals." Sarai lit up. "Want to see the elephant one? He's wearing glasses." Zaria laughed. "I'd love to." Inside, the three sat down. Lennox didn't speak much. He just watched. His wife, his daughter, a hope he didn't deserve but prayed for anyway. Zaria looked at him finally. "You didn't have to come." "I did," he said quietly, "because you're the only one who's ever made me want to be better." Zaria's eyes met his, not broken, not angry, just aware. "We'll take our time," she said. Lennox nodded. "Time is a gift. I'll earn it." Sarai looked between them and smiled. "You guys are nice. I think we should all go to the zoo." Zaria smiled. "I think we will." "What would you do if the person you trusted most had a secret that could change everything?" Zaria gave her heart, her loyalty, and her trust. Lennox nearly lost it all, until truth, time, and courage gave them a second chance. Maybe you felt betrayed too. Maybe you're still healing from a silence that hurt deeper than words. If this story moved you, if you've ever had to find your voice again, tell us in the comments, what does forgiveness look like to you? Would you choose truth over pride if love was on the line? Tap the like button if Zaria's strength inspired you. Share this story with someone who believes in second chances. And if you want more powerful love stories with real-life emotions and hard truths, subscribe now and turn on your notifications.